name is Rebecca Ibrahim. I was born and raised in Connecticut, and I lived there till I was 16. My father's Catholic and my mom's Jewish, so I was raised in a double religion. Basically, when I was growing up, it was like we did go to church. My dad was the more religious of the two, so we did go kind of that route. We did go to church. Catholic church is very strict and kind of predictable, you know, baptism and communion ceremony and confirmation and all that. And I guess I just always had a lot of questions because, so my mom's family was the only family we were ever around as far as extended family. So it was just like a little bit confusing because it's like here you're going to church and then you're, you know, doing all the Jewish holidays and all that. So I just always felt like a little bit of confusion growing up as far as religion was concerned. So yeah, my dad was really religious. We were always in church like every Sunday, every holy day. You know, in Catholic it's considered a sin if you miss church, and it was always like something we had to dress up for. And you know, it was kind of more, we always went to Sunday school and everything, and it was just more of kind of like going through the motions. I don't know that I ever really felt a true connection with God. I went through Sunday school, I went through confirmation, which you do as a teenager, just basically you're confirming your relationship with God, you know, into your adult life and yada, 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 like just kind of going through the motions, but never really having, you know, a real connection with God. Fast forward until I was 16. We moved to Ohio. My dad's a college professor. He got a job in Ohio. We moved to Ohio, and that was like probably the worst time of my life because, you know, I had grown up. I was always in the same community, just typical suburbia, you know, upper middle class. I didn't really, it was smooth sailing. When we moved to Ohio, it was complete culture shock. We like literally moved out into the middle of nowhere. It was just completely different than what I was used to. I mean, all these friends that I had like from the time I was little, growing up, like I didn't have any friends, and it's just like adjusting and all that. And so it was really like hard adjustment period. Basically, I got involved in the wrong crowd, and then I just kind of went really off out of, I don't know, I got in a lot of trouble. I was locked up as a juvenile for 6 months. Then even as an adult, I spent a year in prison. It was just a mess. Okay. From 18 to 22, I was in like a really bad relationship. There was a lot of abuse. There was a lot of, you know, substance abuse, physical abuse. And then basically I was locked up for a year. I got out when I was 22 and ended up being, I was doing really, really well. Like I went back to my parents' house. I got 2 jobs. I was working 2 jobs. I was working 3rd shift somewhere, and then I was working 1st shift somewhere else. So it's like I was basically just working, which was really good because it kept me busy. And then I ended up going back to my ex-boyfriend, which brought me to Detroit. So of course, like the same things that were you know, I was involved in before, I got back involved in. So I was with him for like maybe 4 months and then he ended up getting locked up, which was really like the best thing that ever happened to me. After he got locked up, I ended up meeting my husband. So I was like hanging out with friends. I went to a barbecue and I met my husband. At the time, I didn't even know who he was. So it's like basically at the time he was involved in a bad marriage. I was involved in a bad relationship. And it was just like we started talking, just like having that common ground. And he was just like saying like, oh, you know, at that time religion really didn't come into play. We were just talking or whatnot. And so he was like, oh, you know, what would you do if I told you that, like I knew somebody and they wanted to be with you or whatever? And I was just like, well, I hate men and whatever. So then we ended up like keep talking, and we did like this muta that at the time I didn't even really know what it was. I was just like, okay. And then it's like I realized that like he became someone, at the time we weren't even living together, but I realized that he became someone I could really like depend on. Like I would call him like for stupid stuff, like, oh, I'm hungry, and he would be like there in like 20 minutes with food. And I'm like, whoa, this is like really unusual that like someone even, you know, because my experience as far as men goes was like really bad all the time. So I was like, wow, this is really unusual. And so like the more we started talking and stuff and, you know, got to know each other, and then like we ended up moving in together. I met my husband, and basically what happened was 3 months after I met him, I got pregnant. So that kind of rushed like things, and at the time like I wasn't really sure like what we were doing and this and that. So we ended up moving in together, and originally we decided that we would move to Ohio because his family's all overseas. We decided that we moved to Ohio, back to Ohio where my family is. So I remember very like vividly, we were driving back to Ohio, and he was you know, I said my parents live in the middle of nowhere, so I'm taking him like all these like back roads and everything, and he was like getting like really freaked out, like, where are you taking me? I don't know, like, are you sure we're going to your parents' house? And I'm like, yeah, we're going to my parents' house. And then like, so we stayed with my parents for a couple days, and then we ended up finding an apartment. At the time he was still working in Michigan, so he basically like got me set up there, and he would come back to Michigan and come back and see me on the weekends. That worked for a couple months, and then we decided, like, because he had been looking for a job and stuff and couldn't find one in Ohio, so then we moved back to Michigan. So as far as like coming to Islam, like whenever, you know, I would always see him praying and stuff, and I would ask him questions like, what, you know, why do you have to pray standing up? And just like, I guess kind of looking back, it's kind of like very like basic understanding, but I didn't know at that point because, you know, I had always been Catholic. In the beginning it was like he was actually coming to church with me, and he was also, you know, like doing the everything he was supposed to do as a Muslim. So as I got further along, I ended up converting when I was 7 months pregnant. My number one main reason for converting at that point was because I didn't want my kids to be raised in double religion like I was raised. Being raised in a double religion is like one of the most confusing things you can think of. It's like basically when, now as far as Catholic is concerned, there's a lot of things I disagree with. Different things you would pray to different saints. There was no real connection with God himself. It was always you went through Jesus. If you wanted confession, that you had to go through the priest. Like it's really like there's so many steps. Like it seemed like you could never really get to God because you're always stopped by, you're always like, someone was interceding. It was either Jesus, it was Mary, it was, you know, I'm praying to Saint Anthony, I'm praying to Saint Jude. I mean, you're just praying to all these people, but never really to God. It was like really confusing. Switch to Jewish. Jewish, they have a lot in common with us as far as they don't believe Jesus to be the Son of God. They believe Jesus to be a prophet. Some things are a little confusing as far as Judaism is concerned. I vividly remember every year at Passover with my grandpa, you always have to set a place for Elijah. At the Passover table, there is a place for Elijah because he may or may not show up for the dinner. So we always set a place for Elijah. I remember that. I remember hiding the matzah. I remember Hanukkah. There's a lot of like, I remember a lot of, I associate my Jewish side with a lot of celebration just because it was always with, that's basically the time we were around them. When I became Muslim, like I said, I was 7 months pregnant. I started talking to my husband more and more. I said, I want to know more about Islam. I don't want to raise our kids in double religion. And, you know, as we got more in-depth talking, I basically, from the time we started talking like in-depth about it, I basically converted within a couple weeks. A week after I converted, I put on hijab. I learned how to pray. I did my, we ended up getting like actually married, not just the mota. I basically did everything very quick, just because, like, I don't know, in my mind I just wanted to like be Muslim before this baby came and all this. I was like, had such like a, I don't know, it's like a sense of urgency, like that I had to be Muslim like before the baby got here. Like that was just like a big thing. After the baby came, like everything was fine, and you know, we stayed in the same apartment until she was like 18 months old, and then no, until she was like 16 months old, and then we moved. So it's like we've moved around a lot, and I just feel like all the time I was pregnant, probably because I was. When I first converted, I actually told my mom and dad over the phone that I converted. At that point, we were going pretty like regularly to visit them. We went a couple times a month. We would go and visit them, and I told my parents over the phone, and they were fine with it. It's like my dad was like, well, as long as you're doing something positive, you know, that's fine with us. My mom never really had a problem with it until I started wearing a scarf, which was like almost immediately after. She would always tell me like, oh, you know, I had a dream, and like we were here, we were at such and such a place, except you weren't wearing your scarf. So more than anything, it wasn't that I was Muslim, it was that I had a scarf on. Like that was her big objection. So much so, I remember that I remember being there at one point, and my second daughter was 6 months old, and I'd given her a bath, and I don't know what happened. Somehow like a piece of my hair had gotten wrapped around her toe. So my mom works at a nursing home, so like since my parents live in the middle of nowhere and it's like a half an hour to a hospital, it's like my first thought was like, let me bring her to the nursing home and see if like one of the nurses there or doctors there can like just get this piece of hair off of her toe. And so my dad was bringing me to the nursing home, and my mom called my dad and said, you bring the baby in. I don't want my friends seeing her with a scarf on. So my dad brought my daughter in. They couldn't really do anything. I ended up taking her to an urgent care and then to an ER, and everything was fine. Like they removed the hair, no big deal. So it's like my mom has always been the type of person that she's born Jewish, but she doesn't really practice any kind of religion. She doesn't see the significance of religion. So that's basically what, you know, her problem was, basically religion and the scarf and everything. I personally have never had an issue wearing a scarf. I've worn a scarf, like I said, a week after I converted, I wore a scarf. We actually had, at the time when I converted, we lived in an upper flat. Downstairs was an Iraqi family that had just came here. It was about, well, it was about 4 months after September 11th I converted. And so the Iraqi family, like her, like the woman that lived downstairs from me, who like I'm still really, really good friends with, like she taught me a lot. She taught me about hijab. She taught me a lot about Islam. Just she gave me my first prayer rug, which I still have. It's like she was really a big help when I first converted. So I don't know, I've never really had a problem wearing a scarf. I've never felt like I was discriminated for wearing a scarf. I wore a scarf, my cousin got married. I wore a scarf in a gathering of about 500 people, 90% of whom were Jewish. I've just always been like, you know, I'm kind of like, if I'm comfortable with what I'm doing, I don't need other people to be comfortable with it. And I never really had a problem wearing hijab. Like I always felt like hijab was just something that I should be doing. Like if I'm accepting Islam, I mean, you know, I could have stayed a halfway Catholic. I could have done that. But if I was going to accept a new religion, then I was going to do it in the proper way. I didn't want to continue, you know, I didn't want to like just, you know, accept Islam and then not do what I needed to do. My introduction to Elevate was, of course, through my husband. My My husband's whole family is Sunni. He accepted Shia Islam as an adult. He accepted Shia Islam after, now my husband's been here, he's originally from Pakistan. He's been in the United States for about 20 years. And as an adult, when he first came, the community that he found here was Shia. They introduced him to Shia Islam, and so he became Shia. And so through him, I got really a first-hand look about Sunni versus Shia. And, you know, obviously it had to be something very compelling for him to change from Sunni to Shia. I was always I was basically, when I was introduced to Islam, it was Shia Islam because my husband was Shia at that point. And I just always felt like it was just best for me to follow what was nearest to me. I remember my first time we go to, when I went to the Pakistani mosque for the first time, my oldest daughter was like 4 months old, and I remember going in and not really, it was my first time to the Pakistani mosque, and I was just like, I didn't know, like, you know, I was like a little bit shy in a way because like I had never been there. And I remember like the women there are like so welcoming. This one sister came up to me and she's like, oh, hi. Like she introduced herself to me, and like they just made me feel like so welcome. Al-Bayt is basically like the best example that we can have in Islam. As far as like, I mean, different stories that like really about Al-Bayt that really like I can relate to is like Al-Bayt was like always talking about speaking the truth. Like speak the truth even if like you're in danger. Speak the truth like no matter what. Like Imam alayhi salam, he's always talking about like the importance of gaining knowledge, and not just gaining knowledge, but gaining knowledge that you are able to share with others. Bibi Fatima alayhi salam, she was always protecting her husband's honor, protecting his house. Like even when she was like put in a situation where like when her scarf was being ripped off, and you know when they were like all the women were in the tent and like trying to, you know, look after the children, and all this was going on, and like still they were like such a form of strength. Like I really feel like the women of Al-Bayt played just as important a role as the men. And I know that, you know, a lot of times we always hear about, you know, Imam Ali alayhi salam, we hear about Imam Hussein alayhi salam and their sacrifices, and they did make sacrifices, but I feel like the women really sacrificed a lot as well. Imam Hussein is definitely a sense of strength. Like I think Imam Hussein has more strength than we like really, than the average person can like even like understand. Like I mean his strength and his willingness to fight in the name of Islam, and I don't know, Imam Hussein is like really, like when he knew that like basically he was going to die, and he still like went forward. When his, like after the whole Battle of Karbala, and his like when his daughter went like when his daughter went up to him and she's like, Baba, Baba, like open your eyes, and you know, I don't know, it's really hard to, like to think of like how just like they were so willing, like the whole like Al-Bayt in general were so willing, like just to fight like in the name of Islam, to stand up for their beliefs. And I think a lot of time like people today, they don't do that as much. Like I think everyone should be like striving to be more like Al-Bayt. If we were 5% like Al-Bayt, we would be among the best, you know, of the human population on earth. Because like people nowadays, they're just, you know, oh, well, I don't know what this person will think, or I don't know what that person will think, or I can't do this, or I can't do that. Like, I might offend someone, you know, where they were like, no, we're not worried about if we offend someone or not. We're going to, you know, fight for the cause of Islam. As far as, you know, all the 12 imams, at their time when they were imams, they were always in a battle. They were always in a battle against, you know, like wherever, you know, the king of the time. Like, who's going to, the kings felt a sense of like, people are going to stop looking up to them and following them because, you know, the imams were there, and the imams were attracting like people away from their, you know, kingdom. And it's just always like, they still were like willing to speak the truth, and they were willing to like, you know, go against basically the government at that time, or the kingdom, or the, you know, monarchy, and just still like go for the way of Islam. Imam Mahdi Al-Islam is basically like, he's the imam that like we know is possible he's coming. Like, he can come now or he can come later. So like, we're trying to do our best right now as far as like being the best Muslim we can be. So at the time, whenever he comes, he can accept us and he can recognize us. You know, not we're saying like, oh, you know, please pick me, I'm good, I'm Muslim. He say no, like when he's arranging everything, when he comes and he's picking for his army, he's not going to be, you know, picking the ones that just say they're Muslim. He's going to pick the ones they show they're Muslim, and so he can like get the best group of people. So I just think, I mean, I think our job now is to, you know, just be the best Muslims we can be, show our children, teach our children what's important. I mean, don't become so, I mean, I see so many, it's sad really when you see like the amount of materialism and the amount of, you know, people just putting importance for things that aren't really important. They're not teaching the teachings of like Imam Ali. They're not teaching the teachings, you know, compassion, honesty, integrity, you know, like all these things that are really important to kids. We're not teaching nowadays. It's more like, you know, what can, like show off type, you know. Basically, in 2010, we went to Pakistan. We had our house, we sold our house, sold all of our belongings, and went to Pakistan. At the time, we had 6 children. I'd been to Pakistan before that. I went just for a month when I only had 2 kids. When they were little, I went there. And like, Pakistan for me is really amazing. Like, Pakistan for me is like going home, even I'm not Pakistani, because it's like, my husband's family is like so welcoming, and so it's like you get a sense of just like acceptance and like just everything. Pakistan to me is like everything. Like, if I could be there right now, I would be there right now. It's like, when we first went, my husband was starting a business. It wasn't going very well. I ended up coming back a few months later with a couple of my kids, and then started 3 years of us just living back and forth. He would be there with some kids, I would be here with some kids. We weren't together. It was a difficult time, but I think now it's really like made us stronger, and it's really like, if I look at like everything Allah has done for us, like really, if I look at my life now, it's better than it was when we left for Pakistan. I mean, we have a house now. The house is paid off. We have a bigger house now. I mean, we went from moving around place to place to place to place. My daughter was 3. She'd lived in 10 places. And it was just like a really trying time. And I think that's the thing, like, that like Al-Abaid can teach us too, is like those women, no matter what hardships, no matter what they were going through, they still like they didn't like, oh, you know, nowadays people are, you know, whatever, marriage is disposable and I'm just going to jump around and, you know, whatever, use marriage as a way of relationship. But it's like those women, like, they were so loyal. I really think, like, if anything you can learn from the women of Al-Bayt is loyalty. I mean, because they were so loyal. They were loyal to their husband. They were loyal to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, obviously. There were just loyalty. I mean, that's like, if sum it up in one word, it's loyalty. Because without loyalty, it doesn't matter. You can say, like, loyalty is putting everything into action. Okay, I love you. Okay, good. You love me. But what you can do? Can you be there for me? Can you be there for me when times are hard? Can you be there for me even, you know, you're not in the best situation? Can you be here for me when we're going to a new land? Can you be here for me, you know, whether it's in a tent or in a mansion? Can you be there? You know, it's loyalty. That's, if you don't have loyalty, you have nothing. Like, really, I feel that way. And I feel like those who, you know, are wavering, like, in their Islam, like, they just really have to find the way back. Like, find the way back. Like, how can I be closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? What can I do today to, you know, what small thing can I do for charity? Whether it's a smile, whether it's, you know, money, whether it's, you know, just helping someone out, and, like, help each other. Like, when did people become so selfish? Like, seriously, there's more going on than what's going on with you. Like, you have to remember that Allah helped you when you were in a time of need, and you should have to help others, because, you know, that's just basic humanity. I mean, I feel like people are getting away from what's important. Me and my husband share a car. We've shared a car for almost a year. And, like, throughout the 12 years we've been married, almost half the time we've shared a car. Not because well, there was a time when financially we had to share a car. But, I mean, besides that, it's just one of those things that, why live above? If you're, I don't know, if you're a family of 4, and you have 2 kids as a husband and wife, do you need, like, a 3,000 square foot house? No, you don't. And it's like, that's where people, I feel like, sometimes twist. Imam Rida Islam, when he was in Iran, and at that time, he had to go to sit with the king and in the meetings and in the, like, basically the government affairs, and he would wear the fancy robes. And everyone now wants to use that example, like, oh, we should, you know, he's the imam, he's dressing like, you know, too much luxury and everything, and that's not, like, the teaching. Underneath that, what was he wearing? He was wearing a simple clothing. He had to put that just to sit among them, and then he would take it off and go his simple life. But people nowadays, I feel like they're more kind of show off, and more kind of like not focusing on what's really important. My 5-year-old yesterday was asking me to buy her a phone. I'm not going to buy my 5-year-old a phone. I don't feel kids need to have a phone until they're driving. But her kids, the little kids she goes to school with, they have phones. So now she wants a phone, and I had to explain to her, like, you're not getting a phone. You're 5 years old. You know how to call anybody. If you want to call somebody, you can do it on the home phone. But it's just one of those things where it's like things have gotten so twisted. And it's like, you know, it's just like when your kids grow up, are they going to remember everything you bought them? No. They're going to remember, like, were you there for them? You know, what did you teach them? Like, all this stuff. And, you know, I just feel like this, in a way, it's getting away from Islam. Like, I mean, you can have, it's not saying don't have a nice house, don't have a nice car. If you can have it, that's great. But if you have all those things and you haven't given to charity, then what do you have? What have you gained? You know, if you have all those things and you're not, you know, being kind, and you're not showing, you know, a good light in Islam, then what is the point? Like, I mean, regardless, we have to remember, and especially women that, you know, do wear hijab, or, you know, when you tell someone you're Muslim, okay, you know, but they're going to see your actions, because actions speak louder than words. Everyone knows that. So it's like, if you find yourself getting away from Islam, if you find yourself, like, not holding on to the rope of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then you need to find out, you need to ask yourself, you know, do some searching inside and say, like, okay, what can I do to come back? And, you know, nobody's perfect. Everyone, there's things they can do to get closer to their deen, but what can you do, you know? Because, I mean, you have to think, like, okay, I was in this situation, Allah bring me back. You know, I was in that situation, and, you know, like, Allah is so merciful with us, and we have to remember, like, it isn't, like Allah doesn't walk away from us. We walk away from Him. You know, Allah is constant. He's always there. If you need Him, He's there. You know, so we just have to like remember, like, I think it's a little bit of getting our priorities straight and realize like what's important. Okay, what can we do for our kids, and you know, teaching them. For anybody that's thinking about Islam or wants to know more about Islam, my advice is the first step I would say is to start, like, get a Quran. Qurans are like available. You can go to anywhere and get a Quran. And get a Quran, the one that has the English translation and the transliteration, and just start reading it. Read it little by little and see what you can, you know, come up with. Also, another thing is you can go to a mosque and ask them, because what I found, for me at least, whenever I had any question, like, the women at the mosque are really willing to help you. Like, I wouldn't even hesitate, like, even when even if it's a question that you think, I mean, don't be embarrassed to ask a question. Just ask it and see like what response you can get. I just think that Al Ubaid is just like a really, like, the best example that we have for Islam, and the way that they conduct themselves, like, in their everyday life, is really inspiring, and they're the best example for Islam.